In order to provide some background, my mother-in-law is the type of person who enjoys flaunting even the smallest achievements in the most extravagant manner. Despite lacking any sophistication in her own life, she goes out of her way to pretend that she is the talk of our society. One glaring example of her absurd behavior is the monthly club party she hosts. To clarify, there is no actual club. She merely invites her friends and coworkers for an evening gathering because they share the same profession. She refers to them as her fellow IT geeks. This peculiar ritual has been ongoing for quite some time. During these gatherings, all they do is brag about their accomplishments and achievements from the past month. Given the context, you can imagine how eager my mother-in-law was to announce that my grandfather had arranged a destination wedding for me, complete with a 6-day stay package. This was his generous gift to me, as I had shared my dream wedding plans with him on numerous occasions. Considering my limited budget and the size of the venue, I had meticulously curated a guest list. My husband and I had discussed the situation beforehand, and both agreed to prioritize our guests. Coming from a large family, narrowing down the guest list was challenging, but I managed to invite 22 people, while my husband invited 18 of our close friends and family members whom we regularly interacted with. We were all set to send out the invitations when my mother-in-law unexpectedly showed up at our house late one evening, uninvited and unwelcome. It was already 9 p.m., and her presence irritated me from the start. She demanded that we make changes to the guest list. I couldn't fathom why she believed she had a say in the people I wanted to invite to my own wedding. My husband, to my dismay, supported her stance, which raised immediate concerns for me. I inquired about the changes she wanted, and she mentioned that she had already promised a few of her work friends an invitation. These friends, she claimed, were part of her IT Geeks group. I politely informed her that there was no room left on the guest list, as every invitee was someone we had a close relationship with and interacted with regularly. I sought support from my husband, but he avoided my gaze and sided with his mother. Despite explaining the situation to her, she insisted that I make adjustments. Frustrated, I showed her the guest list, emphasizing that every individual on it was someone intimately connected to our lives, and there was simply no way to exclude them. She then suggested removing my cousin's sister, whom I had lived with for 7 years after college. Her reasoning was that my cousin had moved to Birmingham recently, and it would be inconvenient for her to travel to the States. My patience wore thin, and I asked my husband to reason with her, but he continued to support her perspective, emphasizing the importance of inviting her chosen guests, especially after she had shared details about the destination wedding with them. I tightened my lips in frustration, feeling utterly lost on how to reason with my own fiancé, who was clearly being irrational. My anger boiled over, prompting me to storm out of the room. The following day, I woke up with a resolve. I would give them a taste of their own medicine. If they could be so thoughtless about my wedding, all for the sake of saving face in front of their colleagues, then I could be equally inconsiderate. I dialed my grandpa and recounted the events from the previous night. When I finished explaining, I made it clear that I wouldn't waste my energy trying to make them see reason. Instead, I decided to strip away the main attraction from their little charade. I informed my grandpa, whom I loved dearly, that I was removing him and grandma from the guest list, along with my dad's brother and his family. I also asked him to resign the gift he was giving me since he was no longer invited. Thankfully, my grandfather understood my intention and supported me without harboring any resentment. When I sent the updated guest list to my mother-in-law and fiancé, they were taken aback. I calmly informed them that those were the only individuals I could remove, but in doing so, we had lost our wedding venue. I made sure my fiancé understood the urgency of finding a new venue within the next 2 months or postponing the wedding. Additionally, there was the hassle of reprinting the invitation cards and arranging accommodations for out-of-town guests. I wanted both of them to grasp that none of this predicament would have arisen if it weren't for the generosity of someone in my family who had funded half of our wedding. However, I didn't expect them to suddenly start apologizing for their actions. My mother-in-law came over again, expressing remorse for coercing me into altering the guest list. She implored me to call my grandpa and invite him back, asking him not to cancel the hotel reservation or make any changes. I couldn't help but wonder why she was apologizing now, after she had already achieved what she wanted. She had made a commitment to her colleagues, and now they were receiving invitations. This weighed heavily on her, and she vocalized her frustration, noting that inviting them wouldn't make sense unless the wedding was at a destination. She emphasized that a non-destination wedding would be ordinary and uninteresting to others. Upon hearing her express these thoughts, my husband finally admitted that he regretted supporting her decision. However, I wasn't ready to let his actions off the hook so easily. I reminded him that he shouldn't need extreme measures for him to support me in obvious situations. Although he apologized once again, I made it clear that my decision was final. It was a done deal, and even if I were to reinvite my grandpa, we wouldn't get back his incredibly generous gift. Was I being an angel for standing my ground? I recognized that, ultimately, the wedding was mine, and I should focus on myself. Yet, I couldn't help but feel a bit petty about not reversing my decision. Did this make me a bad person? However, my mother-in-law wasn't finished causing problems for us. As I mentioned in my previous post, I had no intention of asking my grandpa to reinstate his gift. This decision visibly upset my mother-in-law to the point where she began a habit of calling my fiancé every other day. She portrayed me as an ungrateful troublemaker seeking revenge. While, yes, I had taken certain actions that made me feel good, her labeling me ungrateful when she was responsible for this situation felt like too much. But it didn't end there. She went a step further, advising my fiancé to reconsider his life decisions, insinuating that what I had done was just the beginning and that his life would be this way if he married me. During one of these conversations, my fiancé was speaking on speakerphone, and I overheard these hurtful words. I was grateful for this transparency because I knew that my fiancé typically concealed anything that could potentially create discord in our relationship. He did tell his mother that she had crossed the line, but he didn't confront her more assertively. It's his relationship with his mother, and I understand that I can't ask him to sever ties with her just because she dislikes me. However, I am aware that if her interference continues, I might reach a breaking point, as I can't imagine enduring this for the rest of my life. Today, I had a heart-to-heart with my grandpa, sharing the news about the new wedding venue we had secured. While it didn't align with the vision I cherished my whole life, it was still a beautiful place, and I found happiness in it. I reassured him that he was invited again, and his laughter warmed my heart. My gratitude and love for him overwhelmed me. He had consistently supported me in everything I did, and he continued to do so now. Confronting my husband about my mother-in-law's escalating behavior became necessary. Our conversation delved into the awkwardness certain situations had created and the pain they had caused. In the end, my husband promised to address the issue with his mother and clarify her role in our lives. I hoped for a smooth journey forward, devoid of any more drama. Finally, the wedding day arrived, and I am now officially married. Despite the unexpected turns, the wedding was a thing of beauty, and my happiness knew no bounds. I couldn't help but smile when I noticed my mother-in-law sulking in a corner with her work friends, whom she had invited. In a surprising turn of events, my grandpa gifted us a house as a wedding present, a joint gesture from him and my uncles. In the grand scheme of things, I am just thrilled to embark on this new chapter of my life with my husband. I wanted to share this update with all of you who have been a part of this journey in your own way. It infuriates me when people believe they have the audacity to dictate how someone should get married or whom they should invite. It's high time someone reminded your mother-in-law that her time to influence these decisions is over. If she wants to flaunt, she can plan her own event in the future. You should firmly tell her to back off and leave you in peace. Are you absolutely certain about marrying that guy? Anyone with an ounce of insight would have seen through the manipulative game your mother-in-law was playing, and yet he supported her. You're not clueless. but perhaps you should scrutinize your life choices more closely. On a personal note, I live in Queensland while my family resides in New South Wales. Recently, my parents and my 27-year-old sister decided to invite themselves to my house for a week-long holiday after their cruise got canceled. Frankly, I wasn't thrilled about them staying for such an extended period, especially considering I'm pregnant and already juggling the responsibilities of caring for a 2-year-old. To complicate matters, our house isn't spacious enough to accommodate multiple guests. I have only one spare queen-size bed, which my parents were occupying. My sister, however, opted to sleep on my couch. She could have shared my bed with me since my husband is away for work, but her snoring and my constant nudges to roll over didn't make it a viable option. After 2 days of their stay, during dinner on the second night, my dad dropped a bombshell. He casually mentioned that they had invited my sister's boyfriend of just 5 weeks to fly up and stay with us for the entire weekend. He had already booked a ticket and would be arriving on Friday morning at 9 a.m. I had never met my sister's boyfriend. After all, he had only been part of the family for 5 weeks. What infuriated me was that no one bothered to consult me beforehand. Moreover, I didn't have the space for him to stay comfortably. He would have had to sleep on my couch, and my sister would either need to share the couch or my bed with him. The idea of a stranger sleeping in my house while my 2-year-old son was in his own room was unsettling. In sheer frustration, I called my husband, and together we decided to firmly refuse the arrangement. We believed their behavior in inviting a stranger into our home was completely unacceptable. When I called my sister to communicate our decision while I was at work, my mother exploded in anger. She berated me, questioning my judgment and accusing me of doubting their ability to judge someone's character. According to her, they wouldn't invite someone into our house who couldn't be trusted, even though they had met him fewer than 10 times. Eventually, they hung up on me, hastily packed their belongings, and left my house. Later, they sent me a text message claiming that my husband had manipulated my thoughts against them, and that they were leaving not because they were wrong, but because I had been an inhospitable host. According to them, I had become a terrible person since being with my husband for the past 10 years. 3 days passed, and they attempted to call me, acting as if nothing had transpired. Their inability to comprehend my reaction left me utterly baffled. I am left wondering if anyone can shed light on their perspective and help me make sense of this situation. Am I overreacting? I don't think so. I believe I was being a responsible parent, not an unreasonable person. I didn't invite them, and I certainly don't have a serial obligation to be a gracious host to a family that essentially invaded my home. To top it off, they invited a 4th person, a complete stranger, to stay without my knowledge or consent. Their entitlement is baffling. It's almost like they can't stand the fact that I've grown up and am making decisions without seeking their approval. This is the moment to establish boundaries. In my response, I made it clear that I'm not a terrible host because I didn't invite them in the first place. They invited themselves. I generously accommodated them despite the disruption to our usual routines. However, inviting another person into my home without my consent was completely unacceptable. Their tantrum when I refused to cave in and their subsequent decision to leave for alternative accommodation, all the while attacking my character, means there will be a new set of rules before I consider hosting them again. I won't be going to hang out with them after the immature behavior they displayed in my house. I've had enough of their inappropriate actions for now, and I've decided to limit my contact with them until I feel I can face them again. They crossed a line by inviting someone I've never met into my home without my approval. They didn't ask, they simply informed me that it was happening. The fact that they mentioned my seemingly good mood indicates they were aware it wasn't a good idea. They assumed I would be a pushover and allow it. I'm standing up for myself and the safety of my children, and I know I'm not in the wrong here. I'm a 33-year-old woman, currently 5 months pregnant, while my 35-year-old husband is away on a business trip, set to return next month. This is my first pregnancy, and recently, I've been required to continue working at the office. When I first met my husband, he was incredibly skinny, and his eating habits were restricted due to his mother's cooking. She avoided spices, sauces, herbs, and even salt, sugar, and pepper, believing this bland approach was healthier. My husband grew accustomed to this tasteless diet, but when he tried my cooking, he realized there was a world of flavor beyond his mother's limited recipes. One Wednesday, I indulged my curry craving and made a large batch. While I usually had pre-prepared meals in the freezer, this time, I gave in to the temptation. I left the extra portions in the fridge. On that day, my in-laws unexpectedly visited, having a spare key in case of emergencies. When I returned home, ready to enjoy my curry, I found it replaced by a dish made by my mother-in-law, who had thrown my meal away, claiming it tasted spoiled. Unable to stomach her cooking in my pregnant state, I discreetly gave the unwanted food to a homeless person. However, someone witnessed my act of kindness and informed my in-laws. Suddenly, I found myself bombarded with accusatory messages, even from my mother-in-law. My husband supported me, but now I'm questioning if I overreacted. Honestly, OP, it seems like your in-laws are trying to control your life. Their invasion of your home, even when you're not there, is a huge red flag. And while the focus seems to be on your mother-in-law throwing away your food, the real issue here is the lack of boundaries. Setting firm limits with your in-laws is essential before your child is born. Consider changing the locks and installing security cameras to maintain your privacy and peace of mind. Remember, your home is your space, and you deserve to feel safe and respected within it.